You should hear what keeps him up at night.
This is what keeps me up at night. I don't understand how my fellow Americans, I don't even understand how this election is close. And yes, I'm voting for you, but I would also vote for that wall over there.
Well, he's half right. We do need a wall. You know, to keep out gang members, fentanyl dealers, human traffickers, and Anna Navarro. What's funny, though, is that Stern actually thought that was a compliment. Stern has become such a wussified sycophant, he doesn't realize that telling Kamala that he'd vote for a wall is telling her that he knows she's as dumb as one.
Howard Stern made his name by defying the system. Raw, rebellious, untouchable. But when Greg Gutfeld took aim at the self-proclaimed king of controversy, Stern had nothing. No punchback, no wit, just a dead-air silence that said more than words ever could. On live TV, Gutfeld didn't just challenge Stern's legacy. He dismantled it. The rebel, once feared, now looked like the establishment he once mocked. And in that moment, Stern wasn't the disruptor. He was the disrupted.
But that's how Stern can call snacking with celebs at a fancy restaurant exhausting. Exhausting. Like he finished the overnight shift in a coal mine. Or hearing Kat talk about her pets.
Fair.
But I get it, life is tough, especially when you've been cut off from the world for 2 years in a $20 million beach house. I mean, you have no idea how tiring it is walking all the way from the wine cellar to the tennis court and back.
Some TV moments fade into the background, forgotten before the next commercial break. And then there are the ones that crash into pop culture like a meteor, blazing, explosive, and unforgettable. The recent live showdown between Greg Gutfeld and Howard Stern was exactly that. It wasn't just a verbal sparring match. It was a seismic collision between two media titans from opposing worlds. One left scorched, the other soaring. For years, Stern reigned as the self-anointed king of all media. But in this moment, it was clear. The crown was wobbling, and Gutfeld came swinging for the throne.
But it is incredibly brave to take this stance after you've made $300, $400 million not being woke, right? Loving Donald Trump, exploiting the mentally ill, wearing blackface. Look at the crop of woke comments, whether it's Stern or Jimmy Kimmel, his BFF, Sarah Silverman, Joy Behar, Michael Ian Black. What do they all have in common? They wore blackface. And then they went woke. It's not a chicken or egg thing there. You know what order it came. So I call this BFR. It's blackface reparations. There's nothing in Stern's previous career that could withstand this modern witch hunt that he now embraces. So this is a form of restitution. Maybe he says, you know, if I'm woke too, the crocodile will eat me last. But they always do eat. But I get it. He flipped from populist to elitist because now he's with elitists.
Enjoying this video? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon for more. Howard Stern was once the undisputed king of shock radio, a trailblazer who built an empire by saying what no one else would dare. Loud, raw, and unapologetically rebellious, he became the unfiltered voice of a generation tired of playing nice. Stern wasn't just a radio host. He was a cultural force, a lightning rod for controversy. You either loved him or loathed him, but ignoring him was never an option. But here's the catch with being a rebel king. Stay on the throne too long and the blade starts to dull. Slowly, subtly, Stern began to change.
I will say this, Dagan. I thank God for Howard Stern because he does make me feel normal by comparison. Because I'm like the fox recluse. I don't do anything. I don't go anywhere. But he makes me look like, you know, Pete Davidson on a...
Yeah, he's a germaphobe. Like, his wife rescues cats. That's her job, apparently, her thing. But you can get toxoplasmosis.
That's true.
Cryptosporidiosis.
AIDS.
And
no, you can't.
No,
but
you can't get. But you can get.
I mean, what are the chances I get that again?
Like a lot of diarrhea related.
Howard Stern's journey from brash outsider to soft-spoken celebrity interviewer is nothing short of a cultural metamorphosis. Once the snarling voice of the anti-establishment, Stern is now more talk show host than rebel, sipping lattes with Hollywood royalty and trading shock for polish. And that's exactly where Greg Gutfeld saw his opening, a crack in the once impenetrable armor of a media icon. Say what you will about Gutfeld, but the man has refined televised confrontation into an art form. Equal parts political commentator, late-night jester, and cultural demolition crew. He doesn't merely argue, he dissects. With a cocktail of sarcasm, satire, and precision-targeted outrage, Gutfeld has carved a niche out of lighting fires where others fear to strike a match. So when Stern popped up on Gutfeld's radar, first as a casual aside, then as a pointed target, the takedown was inevitable. What began as a side comment quickly morphed into a full-blown surgical strike. Gutfeld didn't just question Stern's evolution, he challenged the foundation of it. He mocked the once chaotic icon for trading in rebellion for respectability, for swapping wild-haired truth bombs for polite, studio-lit chats with A-listers. And Stern? He defended himself on his own show, brushing off criticism by embracing the term woke. If woke meant rejecting Trump, supporting transgender rights, or backing vaccines, Stern said, then sure, call him woke. But in Gutfeld's world, that wasn't a defense. It was a confession. This wasn't just a shot across the bow. Gutfeld leaned in, calmly but forcefully, painting Stern not as a legend, but as a warning, a monument to what happens when a rebel becomes a regime. No raised voices, no frothing rage. Just scalpel-sharp satire and brutal contrast. He held up the two Howards, the unpredictable firestarter who once terrified censors, and the modern version who flatters the celebrities he used to torch. The message was stark. The iconoclast had become the institution. The man who once mocked phoniness now wore the very mask he used to rip off others. Gutfeld didn't need to exaggerate. All he had to do was lay out the facts and let the irony do the work. Stern, the original shock jock, had rolled out the red carpet for the very system he once spat on. The transformation was complete. And in Gutfeld's telling, it wasn't evolution, it was surrender.
But Stern being holed up in his house that long, it explains a lot of things, like how you forget how other people live, especially in hard times like a pandemic. For the longest time, 2 years in fact, the same time Stern's been AWOL, I wondered where he went. Not physically, but mentally. I bet you did too. Remember his screeds about COVID? They were epic and angry, and not to mention wrong.
When are we going to stop putting up with the idiots in this country and just say, it's mandatory to get vaccinated? F them, f their freedom. I want my freedom.
Howard Stern, once a defiant voice of rebellion, now seems fixated on approval. Hollywood's, corporate America's, the mainstreams. The man who once wore nonconformity like armor now appears more concerned with acceptance than disruption. And that's exactly what made Greg Gutfeld's takedown sting. His show, built on a reverence in the ritual slaughter of sacred cows, didn't just target Stern, it indicted him. This wasn't a petty celebrity spat. It was a generational reckoning. Gutfeld wasn't just throwing punches. He was making a point. One icon confronting another, not over fame, but over authenticity. And Stern, once the king of the call-out, had no retort, no scorched earth comeback, no trademark rant, just an empty silence that echoed louder than any rebuttal. Gutfeld didn't need to win the exchange in conventional terms. The real victory came in how clearly the critique landed and how instinctively audiences felt the truth of it. In real time, viewers watched Gutfeld sketch Stern not as a media titan, but as a ghost of his former self. It was clean, quiet, and devastating. Not just for Stern's fans or Gutfeld's critics, but for anyone who's ever watched a once electric voice grow dim and comfortably irrelevant. The contrast couldn't have been starker.
Even when I watch them on Saturday Night Live with the where they have Maya Rudolph playing you, I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of.
Oh my God.
There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now, I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
So a guy who's supposed to be funny for a living now claims her candidacy is too important to joke about. This is a guy who once joked right after the Columbine massacre that the killers should have raped the students before killing them. Not that I like that Stern, but this pendulum swing from saying the most tasteless thing in the universe to putting your balls in a Tic Tac container. You gotta wonder what's going on here. It's striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate.
Howard Stern built his legacy in an era when rebellion meant real consequences. FCC fines, network bans, furious sponsors. But it was that friction, that constant push against the system, that gave him power. Greg Gutfeld, by contrast, rose in a world shaped by cancel culture, social media outrage, and digital dog piles. He didn't fight with profanity, he fought with parody. His weapons were sarcasm, satire, and the ability to turn hypocrisy into viral gold. The Stern-Gutfeld clash wasn't just a feud, it was a generational showdown. Stern represented the analog rebel, Gutfeld, the digital insurgent. One forged in radio studios and shock headlines, the other in memes, punchy segments, and cultural commentary tailor-made for a fractured media landscape. And the viewers saw it all unfold like a courtroom drama. No judge, no gavel, just two media titans and millions waiting to declare a winner. What hit hardest wasn't that Gutfeld tore into Stern's past. It's that he honored it, only to contrast it with Stern's present. The real insult? The past Stern was a legend. The current Stern, Gutfeld suggested, was just another talking head.
Happy Friday, America! Oh man, tonight is a special night. It's Feminine Friday, where all the panelists are women. Tonight we have Kennedy, David McDowell, Kat Tim, and Janine Garofalo. All right. A long way for a meat joke. Okay, I hope you had a good week. I did, and no thanks to Howard Stern. True, the New York Post reported that Stern hit a chic restaurant in NYC with a crew of A-listers, including Jimmy Kimmel, Jennifer Aniston, Jon Hamm, Justin Theroux, Jason Bateman. I was not invited. I guess
Gutfeld didn't just criticize Stern. He held up a mirror. The old Stern, he implied, would have shredded the sanitized version now appearing on satellite radio and late-night talk shows in a designer hoodie. That raw, relentless provocateur wouldn't have recognized a man now swapping soft questions with A-listers or philosophizing alongside Hollywood elites. In Gutfeld's eyes, Stern hadn't just evolved, he'd surrendered. The former cultural sniper had become a media monk, muzzled, manicured, and entirely too cozy with the very system he once set on fire. And once that image took hold, it stuck. There was no unseeing it. The aftermath was immediate. Social media exploded with clips, commentary, and takes from every corner of the digital world. The segment went viral, not because it was outrageous, but because Gutfeld had voiced what countless disillusioned Stern fans had felt for years but never dared to say. And it sparked a bigger question. Can anyone truly stay a rebel forever, or does every fire eventually burn out?
Stern got even more pathetic, wondering how she doesn't nap.
When you said you don't nap, I get it, because like what you've taken on is extraordinarily difficult. And I mean, do you feel the pressure of the moment in the sense that, like when I met you out in the hall, I said, I'm really nervous because I want this to go well for you. I want it to go well for the country.
Hold on. I need a minute.
Is it inevitable that every firebrand eventually becomes part of the very establishment they once tore into, or worse, ends up defending it once their seat at the table is secure? Gutfeld's argument wasn't that Stern had changed, but how he changed. Not through honest evolution or a shift in values, but through calculated self-preservation. The man who once claimed to fear nothing now looked terrified of offending anyone. The cultural critic who once mocked celebrity worship now seemed desperate to be embraced by it. To Gutfeld, that isn't growth, it's capitulation. And ironically, Stern's silence in the wake of the takedown only made things worse. This was a man who built his career on confrontation, whose comebacks were once instant and devastating. But now, nothing. No fire, no rebuttal, no fight. The absence of a response said more than words could. Fair or not, it painted the picture of a man out of gas, caught off guard, maybe even quietly conceding the point.
This definition of woke, it's if you call someone a know-it-all, you're not complimenting them on the breadth of their knowledge. Yeah. You're saying you don't know as much as you think you know. So, yeah, woke doesn't have anything to do with vaccines. What it really means is sort of a slavish devotion to left-wing ideology and then repeating it so you can get social credit.
Right.
That's really what it means.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're smarter than anybody. And he had said in another part of this set, because I believe in the science. Well, if you believed in the science, you wouldn't be hiding out like Howard Hughes in your mansion.
Yeah.
So
Viewers who once admired Howard Stern for his edge and fearlessness were left asking the uncomfortable question. Where did that fire go? It wasn't just that Stern didn't respond to Gutfeld's takedown. It was that he seemingly couldn't. Gutfeld threw a punch, and Stern didn't flinch. Not out of strength or defiance, but out of bewilderment. In an industry fueled by reaction and narrative control, his silence wasn't just a missed opportunity. It felt like quiet confirmation. Meanwhile, Gutfeld carried on, almost smugly, like a man who knew the hit had landed. He didn't gloat. He didn't have to. The internet was doing it for him. Thousands of comments, retweets, and YouTube reactions flooded in, echoing the same sentiment. Gutfeld had said what many had been thinking for years. The validation was instant and overwhelming. What made the moment so powerful wasn't just critique. It was the target. Gutfeld wasn't going after just any celebrity. He was confronting a man who defined attacking ego, hypocrisy, and phoniness. Stern had made his career by holding a mirror to others. Now, for the first time, someone held it up to him. That's the burden of being a legend. Your past becomes your harshest judge. And when you fall short, no one is more ruthless than the fans who once idolized you.
I always hate that argument, like, what happened to the old Stern, or what people have changed. That's not what this is about. It's a weird disconnect.
Well, he hasn't changed.
No.
People have been calling him insane for 40 years.
Yeah,
that just used to be, this guy's nuts. And now they're like, oh, well, we're worried about Howard. He needs help. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you, though, I'm a little sympathetic because what you said is correct, but I'm also a germaphobe.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just have a smaller apartment. Yes. So
The entire exchange, direct or not, felt like a scathing commentary on the media industry itself, a mirror reflecting its slow, uncomfortable decline. Gutfeld's rise wasn't accidental. It was rooted in the very qualities Stern once championed: unfiltered humor, unrelenting defiance, and a complete disregard for polished, corporate-friendly narratives. While legacy media now buckles under the weight of self-censorship, sanitized content, and corporate sensitivity, Gutfeld has seized a moment with bold, brash commentary that cuts through the noise. He taps into the same hunger for authenticity that Stern once fed. But where Stern now leans into soft interviews and the comfort of social acceptance, Gutfeld charges ahead, reckless, raw, and unafraid to rattle cages. In today's fractured media landscape, this isn't just a battle between personalities. It's a symbolic changing of the guard. This wasn't about politics. It was about authenticity, or at least the perception of it. And in that moment on live TV, Gutfeld emerged as the more authentic voice, the man unafraid to say what others wouldn't, even if it meant challenging a legend. Stern, by contrast, looked like a man clinging to a reputation that no longer reflected reality.
Striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate. But maybe that's the explanation. This is Stern's self-imposed penance for subjugating women to demoralizing stunts, capitalizing on desperate females thirsting for attention, even if it's from an oily paddle striking their bare asses.
Whether or not it's fair isn't the point, because in media, perception is reality. The real question is, what happens now? Does Stern rise to the challenge, reclaim his edge and silence the critics? Or does he continue down the polished, professional path, more palatable, but undeniably less powerful? And as for Gutfeld, clearly unafraid to punch up, does he now become the new face of unfiltered commentary in a world star for authenticity? One thing certain, the torch has been passed, or maybe it was snatched. Either way, the clash between Greg Gutfeld and Howard Stern wasn't just a viral moment. It was a cultural pivot point, a generational handoff, a public reckoning for a man who once was a reckoning. And whether you love or hate either of them, you felt it. You knew something had shifted. Because that's what happens when the king gets called out by the court jester who suddenly sounds more like the voice of the people.